Hello everybody, welcome to another review. So I'm going to be reviewing the brand new album by Wet Leg Moisturizer. So Wet Leg is an indie phenomenon that kind of popped out of the scene with their debut record, with some songs doing quite well such as Chaise Long and Wet Dream, which I got to be completely honest, this kind of writing that they had in their sound basically puts them in this position of they create these indie songs with riffs that are just kind of indie riffs, I suppose. They kind of have this whole indie aesthetic, but they put the little quirky, tongue-in-cheek lyrics to it, and a lot of it has repetition as well, such as Chaise Long, which the refrain of the song is on the chaise long, repeated. And Wet Dream is also a very repetitive single as well, but this repetitiveness managed to become like an earworm for a lot of people, and it picked up on radio. And well, they pretty much just got a lot of critical acclaim for that. I will be completely honest, I do not like Wet Leg, and I fail to see what people enjoy with the sound. It just feels very simplistic, basic, and doesn't really offer much versatility other than just to be annoying, which was my biggest complaint with their debut record. So I didn't really have much high hopes for their second album, but I wanted to go into it blind because it's been a while since I've listened to Wet Leg, and they might have stepped up their game with Moisturizer. Unfortunately, they really haven't done much better than the previous. I will commend them with this. It's less annoying, and I felt that the single tracks weren't quite as irritable as what the first album had. They still dive into a very similar aesthetic, but with the direction of, I guess, just exploring more on the indie side. Some of the songs feel a lot tamer, like Pond Song and 1121 as well. You do get kind of the variety here that's not just, mostly annoying songs, especially like Your Mum as well, and Piece of Shit, amazing titles that the last album had. But Moisturizer just kind of gives us a glimpse into probably a more bland side of Wet Leg. At least with the first album, it has a lot of this annoyance to it that it just kind of irritates me, but I find at the same time with the just silly writing and just the repetition, that at least was somewhat interesting in terms of, I personally thought it was bad, but it was interesting and bad. This just isn't really interesting at all. I feel like the big parts I hate about Wet Leg were kind of dumbed down a bit, but then we just kind of get this very sluggish, nothing burger of a record that doesn't really go anywhere. I don't even find any of it memorable, and I've heard a bunch of the songs on radio repeated, not as much as I heard Chaise Long on radio and Wet Dream, but it's still a lot. I've heard this when I was working at my job, so it was not a lot of fun, to be honest, this album, and I found it just to kind of be one of the more bland, nothing experiences that I just don't really want to see myself ever going into again. I think Wet Leg is just a very overhyped band that I just personally can't get into, and I know it feels a bit dumb. It's like, oh, you don't like this band, so why are you talking about it? Because you're just going to have a biased opinion. A lot of reviews I do think are biased, and I wanted to kind of change my opinion a bit on what Wet Leg can accomplish, because there's generally got to be something I'm just missing with it, with how many people like it. But it's probably a case of how I personally don't really give a shit for Charlie XCX music, and yet Brat is one of the most beloved albums from reviews, from critics. So I'm probably just kind of got a weird taste that caters more to I just guess the hard-hitting stuff that I personally enjoy. But when it comes to indie, there's still some genuinely good indie bands, and I just feel this is not one of them. So many go under the radar, like the Amazons, and I feel like that type of stuff should be more prioritized than Wet Leg, in my opinion. But that's just all my opinion at the end of the day. I feel Wet Leg, I kind of wish they stuck to the sound they originally started off as before deleting the discography. They used to be more of a post-punky band, and I felt that kind of made sense. They came out of this wave of indie post-punk, but then they just solely stuck to indie, with some of the songs just kind of sounding quite similar to other songs, such as Chaise Long. The opening just literally sounds like Reptilia by The Strokes, so you have that. And I also unfortunately did have to see Wet Leg live. Normally live makes the experience better, but I just didn't really vibe with it, to be honest. I just wasn't really a fan. But that's pretty much what I'm going to leave off here before I go dive more into controversial takes. But not a fan of it whatsoever. I feel like at least I wanted there to be kind of this aggravating, annoying aspect to it that kind of made me interested. But there just wasn't really anything. The most interesting thing to me is the song Pokemon. Just because I like Pokemon, and it's weird that that's a song, but that didn't even really go anywhere inspiring. I feel like when they were trying to be repetitive, it just didn't really work, and the way that they kind of try to bring in their own sound is to overpronounce stuff, and just the pronunciations, just the silly vocal deliveries is some of the most annoying things I've heard this year. So I'm going to leave it there. I did not like this album one bit. I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. I think this is probably a worse step than the self-titled album, which I was not really a fan of anyway. So that's pretty much what I have to say. So I hope you all enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.